All the other students were glaring at him. But Kevin just ignored them and sat down next to Dalton. "How's it going, bud? Have you recovered?" Kevin asked with a smile.
"Yeah, I'm strong as a horse," Dalton replied as he thumped his chest.
"That's great." Kevin patted Dalton on the shoulder. "Hey, I've got some good news for you. The Hill family was destroyed last night. The only one who got away was that Nolan."
"That's fantastic."
Dalton slapped his hand hard on his desk, drawing everyone's attention.
"So, Kevin, do you know who did it? That must have been something to see," Dalton said excitedly.
He hated the Hill family ever since Nolan had beaten him up and left him for dead. Unfortunately, even though the Steele family was really powerful, they wouldn't stand a chance against the Hills. Professor Colt walked into the classroom. Unfortunately, the lab still hadn't been cleaned up, so they could only have a lecture. But something about her didn't look right. She seemed a little depressed, probably because of what had happened the day before at the herbalism contest. Mike raised his hand and did his best to brown-nose her. "Professor Colt, some students say they saw you at the contest yesterday. How'd you do?" She didn't answer him, but just nodded her head slightly.
"Who knew that Kevin could even make pills? Someone told me that he made a real mess of things."
Wade joined in to try to win points with the professor.
"It was useless. He failed completely."
Luther trumpeted loudly so that everyone could hear him. Suddenly, they all burst out laughing while Mike looked at Kevin contemptuously. The reason why Mike had mentioned it wasn't to laugh at Professor Colt's failure, but to ridicule Kevin.
"Everybody work hard so you don't end up like Kevin."
Luther didn't want to miss a chance to mock him either. Mike kept trying to flatter the professor.
"I think Kevin cheated Professor Colt out of her chance to win. If he hadn't interfered, she would have done great."
Professor Colt quickly came to Kevin's defense. "Okay, let's not make fun of Kevin anymore. Yesterday was all on me. I didn't control the temperature well, so my pill was destroyed. It had nothing to do with anyone else. In fact, Kevin even warned me about it, but I foolishly didn't listen to him." However, the students just thought she was covering up for Kevin.
"Professor Colt, we all know you're just being nice, but you don't have to do that. We're sure it was all Kevin's fault."
Mike smiled and tried to look understanding. Then Luther stood up and pointed at Kevin.
"You're a loser who will never amount to anything. Aren't you ashamed of what you did?"
Dalton didn't even give Kevin a chance to react. He rolled up his sleeves and scowled at Luther.
"What the hell is wrong with you? Kevin's never done anything to you. Why do you always bully him?"
After scolding Luther, Dalton glared at the rest of the class.
"You guys think you're so great? But if you had any ability, you'd enter a contest yourselves instead of just sitting around dumping on Kevin."
Seeing the students look around in shock, Kevin thought to himself, "I don't need to prove anything to my peers. I'll just wait for the next competition. Every time they underestimate me, it gives me a chance to prove them wrong." A few seconds later, Professor Colt cleared her throat. "Now that everyone is quiet, let's begin our class. Today I'll tell you about the preparation method for the metamorphosis pill, as well as its properties and the required ingredients and conditions." But before she could say anything else, a man knocked on the classroom door.
"Excuse me for the interruption. Are Professor Colt and Kevin Williams here today?"
Everyone turned their heads towards the doors like they were a bunch of owls. "I'm Professor Colt. Who are you?" She had no idea what this was about.
"Good morning, Professor. I was sent by President Alexander to give you an award. For some reason, yesterday the president mistakenly thought that there was something wrong with Kevin's pill. As it turns out, he was actually successful, and he's been recognized as the contest's overall champion. So President Alexander asked me to send both of you her apologies on behalf of the entire society." After the man said this, he placed a box on the table at the front of the room, and then he left. The whole classroom fell silent. Everyone was staring at the box on the table in front of Professor Colt. So not only had Kevin successfully made the pill, but he'd also impressed the judge. Mike's put-downs had been making Professor Colt feel worse and worse, but now she was starting to feel a whole lot better. Once she'd gotten over the shock and come back to her senses, the professor announced,
Since you prepared the pill, Kevin, you should get the award. No, Professor. I was just your assistant. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have even been there. I think it's only right for you to accept it. Kevin answered with a smile as he thought to himself, my ambitions are far more important than a silly award. I'll let Professor Colt accept this reward so that I can focus on more crucial things. Professor Colt realized she couldn't win, so she gave in and accepted the award. The rest of the class was pretty boring compared to the big news. She did her best to talk about the metamorphosis pill, but the students had a hard time concentrating. When the class was about to end, Penny suddenly turned around and looked at Kevin. I had no idea you were such a superb herbalist. She knew that Austin Swift had made a reset pill, but the man who dropped off the award said that Kevin was the champion, which means that he'd done even better than Austin. Well, I'm just a beginner, Kevin answered modestly. Can I ask you to make a pill for me? Penny hesitated a little, but it was really important for her. Do you need some herbal meds? Kevin was a little surprised. For a family like Penny's, what pills couldn't just be bought? Why did she need him? One of my best friends has a rare disease and needs something to cure it. But you wouldn't have much to do. We already know what she needs and found the recipe. If you can prepare it for my friend, you can keep the recipe. Penny thought that might entice Kevin to accept. He wondered what it could be. The Sutherland family had gone to a lot of trouble to track down the recipe, so this could be interesting. That's not necessary. If I make a pill for your friend, you can just treat me to a meal, Kevin replied casually. To increase his skills, it was essential that he had access to every new formula. Are you so confident? Don't you need to ask me the name of the pill? Penny asked in surprise. To tell you the truth, Penny, there isn't an herbal med that I can't make. Kevin may have sounded like he was boasting, but he really felt confident that he could do it. Penny didn't say anything more, but she took a long look at Kevin and decided that he wasn't as useless as everyone said.
Wow, Kev, you're really good. You've even got Penny asking you for favors.
Dalton put his arm around Kevin's shoulder and said,
Any chance I could join you?
What do you think? Of course you can come along. Kevin shook his head. Sometimes he just didn't understand his friend.
Then we've got a deal. Don't leave without me, Dalton said with a laugh.
Dalton Steele, what are you doing? The class hasn't ended yet. Professor Colt scolded Dalton but didn't say a word to Kevin.
I don't get it. We were both talking. Why did she yell at me and not you? Dalton whispered.
Kevin smiled and shook his head again. He'd learned it wasn't worth it to argue with Dalton. He pulled out his phone and started to play, making sure that he did a good job of hiding it from the professor. After school, Kevin took Lily back home. Then he got a phone call from Penny. He got back in his car and drove to the address in the western suburbs that Penny had texted him. When Kevin pulled up in front of the mansion, Penny walked out to greet him. Kevin was a little confused. So what kind of pill do you want me to make? Did we have to come all the way out here to do it? After you prepare the pill, you can grab any snack you like, Penny offered. But this isn't the dinner I promised you. We'll go somewhere else for that. I bought this place to hang out with my friends. When he heard Penny say that, Kevin stared at her and thought to himself, so she bought an entire mansion just to hang out? Is this how her family spends its money? Come inside, Kevin. Some of my friends are here enjoying themselves. Penny turned around and walked back inside. Kevin hesitated for a moment, wondering what exactly was going on. Taking a deep breath, he whispered to himself, I hope that this new formula is worth it.
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.